Okay, good afternoon everybody. My name is Rijo Francis and I'll be talking to you about looking beyond COVID. What does India's new normal look like? Before actually getting to the presentation, let me just refresh your memories on what actually happened during the lockdown. In India, you had the total movement which was lost. You were confined to your homes or into your societies. You had to manage your household chores along with your work from home. So you had to build in time to make your meals, to clean your house along with your official work. And every day you had new challenges, but in the initial part of the lockdown, you had new challenges which were coming in, which were very small things under normal conditions. But because it was a new normal, you had to find new ways of addressing these things. And what happened is when people together as a team, they started addressing these issues. There was a close emotional bond which was formed both at the office setup as well as at the home setup. We also realized the value of very, very small things, small things which we normally take for granted, like going for a walk or, taking a drive. These are things we never even think of. We go for it whenever we feel like. But in this new situation, we suddenly realized the value of these things when we just couldn't do it. We also realized the value of small people who come and help us, like the household maid who comes in the morning, works for 2 hours and goes, who helps us ensure that the house is maintained and all that. So when that person is not there and you have to take care of those things, you suddenly realized how much more value they carry. And what happened is over a period of 5 to 6 months, when you're doing this routine, slowly this routine became your habit. There was also a huge anxiety on safety on everyone, from what I mean, there were cases where people never went out, but they still ended up testing positive. And the initial stages of the lockdown, when somebody was tested positive, that person was totally isolated. He used to be taken into an isolation center. His entire family members used to get isolated. His flat used to get isolated. So there was a lot of anxiety on everyone who were there. Companies were also facing a lot of challenge to actually maintain their operations because there was no real time to plan it. This came in suddenly and nobody expected the lockdown to last for such a long time. So people have not really had any kind of time to really anticipate what is going to happen and plan for something like that. And if you think of service companies and companies who are providing these essential services, they have to maintain the services the same way as they normally do. And even for small things, like I said earlier, to maintain that kind of level, it required them to do a lot of things very differently. And like I said earlier, people found new ways and discovered new ways to address these issues or workarounds to ensure that things happen effectively. And what happened is when you found innovative ways to address these solutions, what happens, you also get a lot of pride, you also get a lot of confidence, as a person and also as a team when you do these things. There was an interesting thing which also happened was, see, for example, we started experimenting with a lot of platforms. For example, if you take my case, there was MS Teams was already there in part of your MS Office package, but we never actually used it. But in this present situation, since you were not able to travel, you were forced to use it to talk to your team and to your clients. Another thing that happened during this period was there was a huge disparity between different industries on terms of working capital requirements and rotation of capital. Normally, all companies survive by rotating the capital. The faster you rotate, the more efficient you are. But here you had such a huge disparity. You had, for example, if you take the airline companies, they had the whole fleet which was grounded, and they were looking for ways to have some minimum capital to ensure that they stay afloat. At the other end of the spectrum, you had e-commerce companies who were flooded with orders, and probably they didn't have the logistics mechanism and the delivery mechanism to ensure those orders were fulfilled. So these were the kind of two extremes that were happening at this initial stage of time. During the first 1 or 2 months, schools and colleges were closed, and once they started open, they opened us with online classes. So like I said earlier, there were things like Google Classroom which are always available, but nobody really used it. So it was a new experience both for the teachers and the students, and they found out newer and newer ways to make it more and more effective. There were also companies like Coursera who started offering their courses on free, which is normally chargeable. They started offering free to all the college and all the college students. The idea probably here was, since somebody is already on that kind of a learning platform, it's easy for them to try out these new courses and get their model popularized. What also happened is, probably this was mainly there in the initial part of the lockdown, since people were saving on commuting time. So if I was saving, let's say 45 minutes away from the office, I was saying 1.5 hours a day. So a lot of companies are also promoting people to try and learn something. They were offering course on free and things like that. So it kick-started a kind of continuous learning process among everyone. What also happened during this period was countries and even states or even districts shut themselves out. So you had a strong sense of regionality and nationalism which got built in. And a lot of people, let's say, at the first opening, people went back to their native places since they could work from home from there. Or people who are on daily wages who felt that they would not be able to get any earnings for the next 2 or 3 months went back to their villages. So there was a migration of people to their original villages or towns from which they had come into the major towns and the metros. There was also destruction of the existing geopolitical norms. Last, let's say, 2 decades, we have been only hearing about globalization. This, locking down of country boundaries and regional boundaries led to something like a deglobalization. Like in India, we are talking about self-sufficiency that we are talking about. So this became very prominent everywhere. Kind of protectionism and hyper-nationalism became very, very prominent. This also led to people in the particular initial 2 months, people are looking up to the leaders for guidance. And they have to really, maybe this could lead to something like an authoritarian kind of leadership going forward. There was also a lot of shift from, let's say, capitalism to socialist kind of tendencies. Like even today, if you see the vaccines that are being provided at a much subsidized cost. During the peak of the lockdown, you had food being, distributed free to daily wages and things like that. So there was a shift towards socialist kind of principles to ensure that people were comfortable. What also happened during this period was some of the habits that I talked about earlier. These habits started sticking as we started coming out of the lockdown also. Like I told you earlier, now I've got used to doing reviews on MS Teams that I will think twice before I actually make a travel only for during a review. Unless I have 3-4 other things planned to it, I will try and do the review on a platform itself instead of traveling. Almost 6-7 months, we are totally isolated from everyone, and that has built in a sense of wariness when we meet into new crowds. And even when we travel today, when we see a crowd, we take a step back and just hold us back and maintain those distances. Something that you would have never done earlier. There is also a lot of best practices coming on cleaning. You have to wash your hands every time you go out. You have to, let's say, use sanitizers. A lot of these hygiene factors which have come in, which have got built. You have to use masks. You have to use face shields and all when you travel. So these are all got built in as habits for us. Like I said, in the initial 3-4 months when you really didn't have much option of going and buying things, people start experimenting with e-commerce. And e-commerce has today become something which everybody is trying. Similarly, since going to a doctor was something which was very difficult in the initial stages, telemedicine, which is already there for so many years and never really started picking up because the patients had to meet the doctors and doctors also not very keen on meeting patients on a face-to-face basis. It also led to a lot of initial times lack of knocking of confidence of people, and people started thinking twice before spending money. And there was also this what we call as normally what we face is financial shocks. Where there's a financial crunch for the company and the company is not able to meet its capital requirements. But here that was not the case. The company initially probably had money, but it couldn't really ensure that it could make the products, or it didn't have the sub-products required to make the product and reach it to its consumers. So this spiraled off a lot of cycle of things which leads to lack of working capital, maybe loss of jobs and things like that. Just to give you a small example of what I said now, this is a comparison of e-commerce. You can see that the present market size of e-commerce is around $40 billion. It is expected to go to $100 billion by 2023. And the number of shoppers is supposed to almost go 3 times from 125 to 300 billion. Also, everybody today wants to be present in this, digital platform. And so you are going to see a stage where you have omni-channels present for everybody. Everybody wants to be present in both the verticals. And there are also a lot of new things that are coming out where even in e-commerce people can experiment. You have things like video and audio interface for shoppers. You have and things like that, which will enable shopping experience to improve. Like I said earlier, a lot of people during the initial phases shifted from the major and the metro cities to their native places, which were in smaller towns and villages. So these people, once they reach there, start experimenting with e-commerce, and the neighborhood people also got to see it. And this has led to a lot of more purchases coming from the smaller Tier 2 and Tier 3 towns. It has also probably made us very comfortable in getting tracked. Probably Google used to track us earlier also, but now all of us have the Arogya app with us, which it tells you where you have gone and how safe you are and all that. So kind of we have got used to, we being tracked on our own. Because there was a restriction on finance, and a lot of people had their salaries cut and some people losing jobs and all that, people started looking for value in each purchase. Do I really need to buy this? And if I buy this, does it really provide any value to my life? And also there was a shift, since you're thinking a lot and then buying things, there was a shift to more established brands. Instead of compromising on and buying a new brand, people are more comfortable going for established brands. And there was also a need for, I need this with this of personalization. A lot of increased personalization requirements which customers wanted to make it more comfortable for them. I also want to talk about the millennials. Millennials are people who are in the age group of 25 to 38. And these are people who are probably, earning well and established well, and people who are comfortable, with the concept of buy now and pay later, going for EMIs. If they find something good, they don't think too much about it. They go ahead and buy these things. But what happened is with the salary cuts and layoffs, even the millennials started thinking, does this purchase really offer value to me? Do I really need to spend for this item? Is it really necessary to buy these things? This thought process initiated even in the millennials. So if you talk about the Indian society, we always say we are a saving society. We save a lot of our total earnings. Millennials were an exception till probably the lockdown happened, but probably this lockdown and this COVID is probably make them also get into this Indian saving habit. There was also a huge dimensional change is happening in jobs. For example, an interesting experience which I heard about was when people started, for example, earlier if you want to have to buy a non-veg item, you go to the market and buy it, and the butcher there cuts everything and gives it to you. Now when you're buying it from e-commerce, the people who are supplying need somebody to do that packaging for you. So somebody like a TeamLease who supplies manpower on third-party roles had a lot of requirements coming initially for butchers, and they had to locate butchers, get them trained and place them in these places. It's just an interesting kind of job which normally never comes through the official channel, which also came into that channel because of this lockdown. It is also expected that around 25% of the jobs that we do today will become very different or become obsolete with the technology. Suddenly the technology use that has come into this. And generally as a practice, we are very focused on location. If for this job you have to base in this location and like that. What this work from home has done is we have become more comfortable with a hybrid kind of location. You can maybe be there for 15 days and work from somewhere else for 15 days. So that has suddenly opened our minds to this kind of a hybrid location kind of a concept. If you see the last, let's say, decade or so, with technology and efficiency improving, a lot of people in the lower level, number of people in the lower level reduced. So for middle manager, the number of people reporting to him had reduced. But with this dynamic change that is happening, I think the role of the middle manager becomes the most crucial, because there is a cultural change that is happening in the organization with so much of technology coming in. Every process that you had followed for the last decade or two has got changed overnight. And so these people become the most crucial people to ensure that there's a continuity in the way things are being done. So that is one change that happened. The role of middle manager has become more and more important in the news scenario. It has also led to the rise of a diverse kind of gig workers. People, let's say, for example, the best example would be women. Women would sacrifice their careers because they had a baby or something like that. Now with work from home, a lot of these people are going to come back into the workforce. Parents in the initial stages who probably wanted to sacrifice, retired people, managers and consultants who are now today more comfortable during 5 to 6 different kind of jobs instead of being, one kind of specific job. So this has led to a very diverse gig work concept coming through. There was also a need for reskilling which has come up. It's not that it was never there, but this kind of huge technology change has made everybody realize that you need to ensure that your skills are developed to stay relevant in the new scenario. And also, what used to happen earlier is you used to do finish your college education, then probably for 2 decades you would manage with that. With the kind of technology changes that are happening, that is no longer required. You need to keep on upgrading yourself to stay relevant. What has also happened is because of this thing, the number of people who are registered for online courses or reskilling has gone up from 2 million in 2018 to almost 5 times by end of this year. So that is a kind of 5-fold increase. And another dimension that has happened is if earlier the reskilling was being done by people in the 25 to 35 age bracket, today it's done by everybody, because everybody understands the importance of knowing the latest skills and the latest technologies. There are also some evolutions which are likely to happen, and I've just taken this example of the Indian call center. India used to be the call center hub about 2 decades back, and over a period of time, since most of these call centers were in the major towns and people's salaries had gone up and rental costs had gone up, a lot of companies like Philippines and all took away a lot of this business from us. But what has happened? Because of the cost of manpower increasing and the rental cost increasing, a lot of business in this call center had actually shifted to companies like Philippines. But because of this, people in the initial stages, what are people able to do? They were still working from homes. And what are the challenges they had? You have, threat of data security. You had to manage ambient noise. But these things over a period of 2 to 3 months got managed. So what is likely to happen tomorrow is people from small places at a much lower salary cost without hardly any real estate cost will start logging in, and this could again bring back India as one of the call center hubs for the world. There's also a huge shift in the technical landscape. Previously what used to happen is, you would have one technology which would come in and which would disrupt the industry, and that technology would continue for 4-5 years. For example, if you had, let's say, the internet which came around 25-26 years back and changed the way Indian IT companies were working. Then you had the Y2K thing which came in, and it actually established Indian companies worldwide with the kind of services they can provide. But today what is happening is you have 4 or 5 technologies which are competing at the same time. You have something like a cloud, you have artificial intelligence, you have 3D printing, you have data analytics and data science. All these are themselves capable of disrupting the thing. But now what is happening is that all of these 4 or 5 technologies are parallelly coming up. Something like the cloud itself is good enough to disrupt the whole industry. So, and because of this experience during lockdown, every industry wants to be updated with the latest technology so that in case of a second time something like this happens, they're able to manage things efficiently. So, unlike earlier where probably a banking sector or one particular sector would be running for 3-4 years time, here you have multiple sectors wanting all these technologies to be done simultaneously. What this has led to is, if you see, let's say the major Indian companies, so IT companies, Infosys in the last 6 to 7 months has acquired some 4 to 5 companies which are into sales management, customer experience management, data analytics and things like that, so that they can build scale quickly. Similarly, Cognizant, I think they have acquired some 7 to 8 companies. So this clearly shows that the big companies are realizing the requirement and they're quickly buying out specialist players so that they can build up those capabilities. I'll quickly cover SaaS also, because this is something where I feel India is going to make a big mark coming forward. If you take typically a SaaS company, SaaS provides service to enterprise companies. The products are based on the cloud. And normally, if you see till now, these companies are formed by either NRIs who are still an NRI and starts out in India, or a person has come back, an NRI has come back and then started in India. But what has happened today, particularly maybe because the Geo platform being funded by a lot of the big companies, there is a huge growth of SaaS companies picking up in India. In fact, in the last 1 year, there's a 30% growth in India compared to 15% in the US. So this is one sector where I feel, there's going to be huge potential coming up for Indian companies, and where India is going to become a market leader going soon. The government has also done its bit in this by, coming out with modifications of 1% company rule, where it becomes, there's no limit for minimum or maximum paid up capital required. They can convert these companies to any type of companies at any point of time. They've also mentioned that NRIs can, form these kind of companies. And the time requirement to be qualified as an NRI has been dropped from 182 days to 120 days. So the government also has played its part to ensure that these kind of companies come up and take India to market leaders in this sector. Just a quick cap on the new working capital requirements, which, or the models which evolved during this period. Let me explain that with a small example. Now, let us say you have an installation service provider who was part of this thing. So you would give him a per piece rate. If you install this fridge, you get 300 rupees. And he probably would install 1,000 fridges in the month. So he would be paid 1,000 into 300. And what would that person do? He would employ 10 people, pay the fixed salaries and do that. So at the end of the month, he would raise the bill for the 1,000 fridges installed at 300 rupees and submit it. Somebody would check those things and then, they would get paid. So what used to happen because of this is there would be 2 to 3 months of working capital which would get blocked because of this. In the new scenarios, there was nobody to check, nobody in office, people started paying. At the end of the day, you have to pay 1,000 into 30,000. People started depositing that money. The checking could happen at a later form. So this has led to faster ways of ensuring that working capital models are evolved and working capital starts moving very, very fast. If you see India as a as a whole, you will find that Indians' taste buds change every maybe 200, 150 or 200 kilometers. So originally what you used to have, you would have a town in X place, then you would have a gap of let's say 100 or 200 kilometers, and then you would have the next town. So each of these towns had slightly different kind of taste that they were used to. And how were these towns adapted? These towns were were serviced by the small kirana shops that we have there. And India has lakhs and lakhs of kirana shops. What used to happen in the last decade or a half a decade was there would be this huge shops or supermarkets which would come in, which were slowly eating away the share of the kiranas. And the kiranas were also not upgrading into new technologies. So they were also losing out once these big retail giants came in. But what has happened is during the lockdown, you needed people who are available nearby to actually service those customers. So the retail chains were offering in a big catchment area, and they probably found it very difficult to service this kind of setup. And people are not going to come out to these places. So this has actually brought back the relevance of Kirana shops, and since they have also understood the importance of adapting technology, now they are also open to adapting more and more technologies. What this is likely to do is, now if you see today, we have this, like I said earlier, like something like a Walmart, which is a huge store, and you ensure that people come there to buy your produce. A concept like that is going to become more and more irrelevant, because people want everything nearer to their neighborhood. So probably going forward, you might have smaller stores available in the nearby neighborhood, which will also serve as supply points for people who purchase online, so that the speed of servicing becomes much more faster. What this also led to is the kind of rentals that you had in malls and all, that concept totally got changed. What this also led is, since people are a little bit, not comfortable with touch, nobody wants to touch something, and because, you feel that the virus gets infected, people want something like a touchless experience, so you have something like an Amazon Go, which is a fully automated show which has been opened in Seattle, where there's nobody manning the store. You just walk in, pick up the stuff, whatever you want, and just go. Whatever you bought is immediately debited to your account. And even in this e-commerce channels, like I said earlier, you are having a lot of new technologies coming in, which will use those things like virtual reality and augmented reality to bring you that kind of better experience when you make that purchase. And of course, the superstars of this lockdown were the delivery guys. Not that they were not superstars, they were superstars earlier also. But in the situation where you had a lot of places, you had no other means to get your stuff, you were totally dependent on the delivery guys to ensure that you got the products that you have done. And the number of people employed by the major e-commerce companies in India is expected to grow to around 1.5 million by the next year, that is 2022. And normally these guys earn between 12,000 to 45,000 depending on the kind of deliveries they do, because it's a variable kind of model. The more deliveries you do, the more you get paid. A lot of companies, to retain this kind of manpower, particularly because of this situation where there was a hard crunch for people, have started offering insurance, loans, training how to handle customers, and training how to actually use many of these apps to ensure that they stay with the companies. In the last 6 to 7 months, if you see the major FMCG companies, they have increased the number of distributors by 40 to 45% percentage across the country. This is because of a lot of small places in Indian subcontinent where which were not serviced directly by the company distributors. They were serviced by some wholesaler and things like that. But because of the situation where you need to ensure your presence is available everywhere, every FMCG company is now growing and establishing it, increasing its distribution reach to ensure that they are available at each and every heartland. What this has also led is, this has led to a huge change in the real estate sector. If you take the offices now, offices were shut down for a long period of time. Now, offices have got totally decluttered, with the minimum distance being to be kept between people and all that. So while real estate space might not really drop, because the number of people who can sit and work, will be reduced considering the space required, the way people look at an office, the office layout is going to change dramatically. It's already changed in most of the places and will change further. Also, when you work from home, your home was never made for you to work 5 days in a week or 3 days in a week sitting there for 9-10 hours. You never had the kind of seating capacity or the ergonomic chairs and all to sit for so much a long period of time. So today what is happening is, when people look at the home, they also look at this facility. Tomorrow if I work from home, I need to have this facility built in so that I can comfortably work for 8 or 10 hours going forward. And like we have seen, because of the salary cuts and things like that happening, a lot of people have actually postponed their home purchases to some period of time. And like I said earlier, since people are shifting out to their native place and all that, the number of purchases also dropped, and the kind of discounts that people have to give to enthuse somebody to buy it also has gone up substantially. While earlier maybe 5 to 7% is good enough, today nothing less than 20% makes anybody even look at that proposal. So the kind of discounts people have to give has gone up substantially. Similarly, there used to be brokers who would book many of these flats or apartments and keep it so that they can sell it at a resale at a higher price. So without this kind of working capital movement happening, they are totally stuck up, and this is going to lead to a lot of these kind of people moving away from the system, and you will probably have a direct company to customer kind of interface happening going forward. With a lot of focus on manufacturing that is happening, the requirement for manufacturing facility is going to go up in a big way. The kind of online presence everybody wants, they will need servers on a big scale to manage. So the the housing or the buildings required to house these servers is going to go up in a substantial way. And of course, government is pushing low cost housing in a big way. So that is one sector which is likely to really go up. This is one interesting sector which really came up during the lockdown, is the luxury quarantine. Let's you take a place like Bombay where you have a lot of space constraint at home. People are comfortable with that because they were close to the office there. And they would spend only maybe 7 or 8 hours or 10 hours at home, except for the weekend where probably they would go out. But when you have to spend the entire time there, for example, for Bombay, a lot of people started operating out of Alibag, which was a 3-4 hour drive earlier. But then there was this Roro service which was started out, I think, in September, which could carry 145 cars and 900 passengers in one shot. So a lot of people who had that kind of money power were comfortable operating out of there, which gave you more space and more comfort, and you could more effectively, manage things more effectively. It also led to increase in bookings in, premium holiday destinations, since people are more comfortable being in places which offered them that space and comfort and things like that. And even holiday homes started offering things like helipads and things like that. An interesting concept is, the requirement of private jets in India after the lockdown has gone up by almost 90%. And DIL has, in fact, opened its first terminal only for private jets. So this is two things which are really something which probably would not have happened earlier. Similarly, since all the restaurants were closed and 5-star restaurants didn't have anybody walking in, they also started offering options like delivery or takeaway options, which are also being picked up. Make in India, which is something where we are trying to attract manufacturing in India for the last maybe 7 or 8 years, and really not picked up. But with this, what has happened is every country who had a manufacturing setup in China is trying to de-risk left by having something like a China plus one. And India is at an advantage or a golden position to take this advantage. You have countries like Japan, which has offered something like $2.2 billion to companies just to exit China and find an alternate also to China. This is likely to lead to a huge, really like to pick up manufacturing in India. But it will also need a lot of infrastructure support. I've taken this case just to highlight it. For example, crates and containers are in which maximum your movement of goods happens externally for export. And if you see in this case, we have around 25 million crates who are in circulation today. And 90% of that share is controlled by China. And the reason for that is almost 30% of this source of these crates start from China, because the kind of manufacturing it does. So India is today normally not really, there are a few players who are there, but India doesn't have a very big market share in this. But this is one sector which India will have to get in, because during the lockdown, even after lockdown, once it had opened also, there was a huge shortage of containers, and this is one sector that we'll have to build in scale if you're looking at becoming a big manufacturing hub. In addition to the containers, you'll also have to look at, shipping lines and their global footprint to ensure that, you are able to reach out to whichever countries that you want to. Just to show an example of how an alternate revenue stream came out, we had these airline companies who were totally grounded since they couldn't shift passengers out. So they had taken out this concept of using the same passenger aircraft to shift materials to within the country and outside the country by keeping them on the seats, things like farm produce, garments, seafood and things like that. So this existing, if you take the freight revenue of an airline is only around 5%, but this could help airlines build in revenue in this stream going forward. And I just said this as an example because I'm sure all companies would have found such similar revenue streams come up during this period. Telemedicine, like I quickly covered earlier, was something which was present earlier, but nobody took it. But this time it is really picked up. Forget about the tech-savvy crowd. Even people who are not using, who had to meet a doctor, had to use this. And a lot of people have shifted onto this app. And I'm sure this will help India in a big way, because the number of doctors per people is very limited. And if you start using things like telemedicine, he will be able to address to a wider audience. I remember this example of my colleague who was able to show his son through a telemedicine app, and even of my wife who was able to do an appointment for her father through this app. So I'm saying everybody's gone into this app, and this is something which will help build India's reputation in this healthcare sector. One good thing which happened for India perspective, we were able to build quickly COVID centers at a very fast pace, and this, as such, if you see, there are a lot of people, health tourists or medical tourists, who come to India to take a lot of medical treatments. So I think this kind of opportunity which we have quickly taken will help us. And with telemedicine also coming in, tourists who are coming in to take medical facilities can, probably consult the doctor over telemedicine and then come in as and when required, so that they get the facilities at a much lower cost. So this is one sector where I feel India is really going to come up. It's already a major power in that sector, but it will further go up going forward. This is one interesting thing probably which nobody anticipated. We have two companies who are today giving vaccines, that is Covaxin and Covishield. And though the percentage of Indians who have got vaccinated is low compared to other countries, but the stockpile of vaccines that these people have made is humongous, with the result that almost 54 countries have been supplied by vaccines from India. So you could probably be looking at a scenario where a couple of these two companies are already major manufacturers of vaccines, but this has really highlighted the kind of strength India has in this. I was also reading today about syringes, health syringes, and where one of the Indian companies is becoming a major player in supplying syringes. So these kind of, because India has reacted quickly and come out with these kind of solutions, it is going to become a place where people are going to look forward to address these kind of requirements. Defense is one place which is going to pick up with the manufacturing, like we have BrahMos missile being supplied to Philippines and 4-5 countries asking for, the light fighter aircraft and things like that. Now, if people are sitting at home, what do? They have to sit and watch what? Television. That's the only opportunity we have. So India has something like 250 million households in India. Out of which about 160 million households have TVs today. But what has happened during this period was the price of a smart TV, which entry-level price smart TV, which is earlier 25,000, has dropped to 15,000. And this has led to smart TV, buying growing up substantially. If you take the e-commerce companies, 92 to 93% of their sale is today of smart TVs. And if you take the Indian scenario, like I said, 160 million people have TVs, out of which, forget about smart TV, flat TV is only 50 million. So there's a huge opportunity, and these people who don't have the original TVs are going to change into smart TV at some point of time. So the opportunity here is very huge, and we have seen some new players come in and use this opportunity by providing very feature-rich TVs at very attractive prices. So this, and I think what is going to happen is, if you see in China, you have a lot of major players like Foxconn and all who build for the world. They make mobile phones for the world. Some of these have already come into India for making that a manufacturing base. We also have some players like, let's say, Dixon, who actually manufactures a lot of companies. So I am seeing all of these, particularly in these two sectors like mobiles and TV, since we have an inbuilt capacity of requirement within the country also, to India to become one of the major manufacturing centers of these kind of products. Before I wind up, I just want to quickly take you back. If you see earlier, India used to be a country where people used to come to buy things. If you take 2000 years back, Europeans used to find a way into India to buy maybe pepper. So India at that point of time had the best kind of products available that were required at that point of time. We also had our own textile industries which were self-sufficient and manageable. And people used to find trade channels to, find sea routes to come to India to buy these kind of products. Which is why if you see, you will find that Christianity was there in Kerala as early as 33 AD, even before it was there in Europe. Or you would have found how Buddhism has spread from India to all across the world. Or how Hindu temples are there across Asia. So I'm saying, as a community or as a country, we were people who were very adventurous, willing to strike those trade relationships, and very outgoing kind of people. You also have hear about people, this close trade rings you had between Gujarat and Africa earlier, and you will find tales of African slaves who came into Gujarat and became commandants of a lot of those princely states. So India used to be a place which was very outreaching, very entrepreneurial, had the best products, and knew how to manage the trade to get people to come and buy their produce. But what actually happened is 300 or 400 years of British rule made us totally different. We became less adventurous. We became more inward looking, more divided between ourselves, and our whole outlook, what we had earlier, had changed. So what could probably happen today is, now when a crisis like this happens, you go back inward and find out a lot of your strengths. So what I feel is, now I'm a great cricket fan, so let me take an example of from the cricket field. If you go and watch the Indian cricket team of the 80s, not that they were bad team, they were a fantastic team. They won the World Cup in 83, they won the World Series Championship in 85, they're a fantastic team. But if you watch their matches on the screen and you watch today's team, the kind of body language that they had and what we have today are very different. So what I feel today, because of this crisis and because of this opportunity that has come to us, we are going to find ways to rediscover our old entrepreneurial skills, the capability to come out with the best products which will make people to find trade channels and come to us and ensure to buy our products. That's all from my side. Thank you very much.